Hello again, folks. I know, for once I actually jumped right on this shit, huh? It's a slow week in class, and yeah, I only have 4 chapters to read this week, as opposed to my typical 8 or 9. So, it worked out. Pardon me, still recovering from the cold. Yes, I know. It's a pain in the ass. What can I say? But how about this supplement to Zellner's motion for reconsideration, huh? Is it just me or does she put Ken Kratz on notice? We're coming for you, Wilbur. Just saying. And Leah, while we're at it, we're coming after you too, sweetheart, because I'm sorry, but you really need to learn when to shut your mouth. Don't know how you missed that fucking memo. So, yes, I know, this technically should be an O, folks, but I'm saving that for when the evidence files hit, because that's going to be the really telling thing. All the stuff that's being said in here is great and everything, but I'm a little more concerned about what's going on with the exhibits. I really want to see that. That's going to be interesting. So let's start going through this. You might as well just tuck in right now, grab a smoke, grab something to drink, because I am going through this whole fucking thing, all 16 pages, because there is just some really interesting shit in here, kids. Refreshing. All right, so, very dirty. Oh my God. No wonder my outlook is so shitty. All right, let's go through here. That's better. Oh, what's going on with my hair? Okay, page 1, introduction, not a big deal. The good shit starts on page 2. Again, link below, you know me. The effect of the court's failure to vacate its October 3rd, 2017 ruling is that it has unilaterally blocked all future scientific testing in the Avery case. In direct contravention of the April 4th, 2007 order entered by Judge Willis. Hold on a second. Sorry, little monkey boy needed something to drink. Okay. Now, what I love, though, is at the bottom of this paragraph, but we'll get to that in a second. She states here, Mr. Avery raised new evidence in addition to pointing out that this court made manifestly erroneous determination of law and fact. Again, this court did not respond. On October 31st, 2017, Mr. Avery filed a supplement to the previously filed motion for reconsideration. Mr. Avery filed an amended supplement to the previously filed motion for reconsideration on November 1st. Mr. Avery filed an amendment to Group Exhibit 7 of his previously filed amended supplement to the motion to reconsider. The court did not respond to any of these filings. I wonder why. What's taking so long? Trying to get that foot out of your mouth there, Judge? Just wondering. This, however, this is probably my favorite part out of all 16 pages, is Kathleen Zellner drawing a line in the fucking sand and stating, tomorrow Mr. Avery will file his notice of appeal from the court's October 3rd, 2017 order. Now, if that ain't some shit, I don't know what is. Pause again. Whoops. Now, she then goes on to state the Brady violation. The suppression by the prosecution of evidence favorable to an accused upon request violates due process where the evidence is material either to guilt or to punishment, irrespective of the good faith or bad faith of the prosecution. And then she goes on. This is the great part. Evidence is favorable to an accused if disclosed and used effectively. It may make the difference between conviction and acquittal. So she's basically calling out Kratz for his omission. We'll be nice and use the word omission of exculpatory evidence that would have been favorable to Stephen Avery. So all these motherfuckers sitting there talking shit about how Strang and Buting and all this other crap and they failed and blah, blah, fucking blah. Well, guess what, guys? They do later in this motion admit that they did not provide the kind of counsel that Stephen Avery deserved, and certainly that Stephen Avery paid for. I mean, it's defense 101 to hire a blood spatter expert and a ballistics expert when that's a big deal in the case. We all know this. But the issue here is that had Strang and Buting had the evidence that Kratz withheld, already we know that there's an issue here. And the fact that Kratz withheld this evidence diminished the type of defense that Strang and Buting could have mounted had they had that evidence. So you can sit there and talk shit about Strang and Buting all day long, but the fact of the matter is that had they been given all of the evidence instead of just some of it, they could have mounted a much better defense. On November 11th, 2017, undersigned counsel Kathleen Zellner had a meeting with Mr. Avery's trial attorneys, Jerome Buting, Mr. Buting, and Dean Strang, Mr. Strang. One of the purposes of the meeting was to determine whether certain evidence was disclosed to Mr. Avery's trial attorneys before his trial. Get this shit, kids. Gotta take a hit off my smoke for this one. During the meeting, it was discovered that, in fact, the state had failed. The state had failed, in the form of Mr. Kratz, to disclose material exculpatory evidence related to Bobby Dassey's status as a potential suspect. He failed to disclose this. Wilbur, your ass has just been put on notice. And by the way, kids, in case anybody's wondering, in case anybody wonders why this is such a big deal, why Ken Kratz keeping back evidence is such a big deal, I draw to your attention Exhibit A. Nancy Grace. She also withheld exculpatory evidence in not one but several cases, thereby calling into question all of her other cases, and thereby losing her fucking license to practice law. Now the only way she can make any fucking kind of a living off of her law degree and her big hair is by screaming at people and being rude to people on TV. That's the only way she can make any money with her law degree now, is because she was disbarred for withholding exculpatory evidence. Do with that information what you will. Specifically, the state failed to disclose the report of a forensic analysis performed on a computer to which Bobby Dassey had access prior to and after Teresa Halbach was murdered. Such evidence would have strengthened Mr. Avery's Denny motion, which was pending at the time that the computer forensics report should have been disclosed. You knew, Kratz. You knew that that fucking evidence would have quashed your Denny motion out fucking right, and you withheld it because you knew that if you allowed Strang and Buting to have this information, that your Denny motion would go right out the fucking window. Right out the window. You fucking slimy dog shit. Oh my God. The fuck is wrong with you, Kratz? Seriously, I want to know what's wrong with you. I want to know if there's like a lesion on your brain, if your mama dropped you on your head as a child, if you had a late night sneaky uncle. I want to know what the fuck is wrong with you. Because, oh my God. Disclosure of the computer forensics report would have enabled Mr. Buting to meet the Denny standard by establishing a motive of sexual assault for the murder of Miss Halbach and to introduce Bobby Dassey as an alternative suspect to the jury. Jesus, I am very windblown today. There's a reason for that. Our car was fucked. We took it in to have a tire changed, and it's the kind of car that has air shocks, and I took it in and the air shocks were working. I took it out and the air shocks weren't working. So now we had to tow it over to this other mechanic, and now we're waiting for it to come back, but in the meantime, I have to walk the kids to school. Fun! Maybe my ass will finally fucking shrink. Mr. Buting's affidavit is attached to the second supplement as Exhibit A. Mr. Buting states that when Ken Kratz tended discovery to Mr. Avery's defense, Mr. Kratz itemized the discovery and cover letters which accompanied the disclosure of the documents. By way of correspondence dated December 14th, 2006, Mr. Kratz disclosed a large batch of discovery. Aw, how nice. How lovely of you, Kratz. Included in the discovery was a report from Special Agent Thomas Fossbender entitled Examination of Brendan Dassey Computer. The report number was DCI report number blah, blah, and the report was dated December 7th, 2006. As described in Special Agent Fossbender's report, the state seized a computer from the Dassey residence on April 21st of 2006. The report indicates that the computer was then transferred to Detective Mike Velli of the Grand Chute Police Department for forensic examination. Why? Why? Why bring in yet another police department into this shit? What? Calumet County and Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department didn't have the fucking resources? Are you fucking shitting me? Why bring in yet another police department to do this? That's the question I want y'all to ask yourselves. Per Special Agent Fossbender's report, Detective Velli returned the computer to Special Agent Fossbender on May 11th, 2006. The report further states that on a subsequent date, Special Agent Fossbender received from Detective Velli a CD titled Dassey's Computer Final Report Investigative Copy. The report also states that the CD contained information on websites and images from the hard drive. Mr. Buting avers in his affidavit that neither the above referenced CD nor Detective Velli's investigative report were turned over in discovery. Kratz. Oh my God, this is fucking great. The December 14th, 2006 letter from Mr. Kratz likewise confirms by omission that neither document was disclosed to the defense in that batch of discovery. Do you understand what that means, kids? What that means is that in that itemized discovery, which was well after this report was received and well after it should have been included in the discovery, it confirms that that specific report and a copy of that CD were never turned over to Stephen Avery's defense counsel. You fucking slimy shit, Kratz. And I've got something else to say about misappropriation of evidence, but we'll save that till the end of this. Mr. Buting likewise notes that Special Agent Fossbender's report indicates he did not book the CD or Detective Velli's report into evidence. Really? You mean to tell me, Fossbender, that you received this report, you received this CD, but neither the report or the CD were logged into evidence? You know what, kids? We're going to take a pause for a minute. Time in. Yes, I had to pause for a second to get my cigarette holder because this requires the big guns. So let me get this straight, Fossbender. You received this piece of evidence in December. You then proceeded to not log it into evidence at all. Do you realize what that means for you, Thomas? Or as we would say it here in New Mexico, Tomas? Do you realize this? This calls into question your abilities as a detective, as an agent, as an investigator, as a fucking human being. That's like the number one fucking thing of your job is to notate. That's a big part of being an investigator, is keeping meticulous fucking records. And the fact that you didn't keep meticulous records in this case, as is evidenced, shows that either you are completely fucking incompetent or you purposely kept that information out of the record. Either way, you don't deserve those awards or that fucking badge. Rather, the report states the disc received from Detective Velli, as well as the hard copy pages of instant message conversations, were maintained in Special Agent Fossbender's possession. So you didn't log them into evidence. You didn't put them in the evidence locker. You kept them yourself. Why? If the information on that disc and the information contained in those hard copies were not in any way, shape, or form effective for Stephen Avery, why would you keep those out? Tommy? Although the state has never disclosed Detective Velli's final report, the report must contain evidence favorable to Mr. Avery. Importantly, many of these searches were performed at times when only Bobby Dassey was home and able to use the computer. Bobby Dassey was the only family member at home during the week from 6:30 a.m. to 3:45 p.m. All other Dassey family members who lived at the residence were either at work or school during these hours. And you know she's got the proof to back that shit up. She wouldn't put anything in a motion that she couldn't back up, kids. However, get this shit. Scott Taddick was observed driving towards the Dassey residence in his green truck on several occasions during this time period. Bobby, Scott, what'd you have going on during those hours? Got a circle jerk going? You fucking nasty motherfuckers. Mr. Avery never accessed the Dassey computer and did not have the password for the computer. Mr. Avery did not have a key to the Dassey residence, and the residence was locked when no one was home. Mr. Avery only entered the residence with permission of a Dassey family member. Mr. Avery worked during the weekdays from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The supplemental affidavit of Stephen Avery is attached and incorporated herein. You know, for all you people trying to say that Stephen Avery could have so easily accessed the Dassey, why would he need to? Okay? Think of this. Because there are a lot of people saying, well, Stephen Avery could have gone onto the Dassey computer and accessed all this information, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing, though. Why would he have to? If it was all prior to the murder and the murder was a spur-of-the-moment sort of thing, why would he have to? He had his own fucking computer. He could have done that his damn self from the comfort of his own home. Do you go over to your family members to beat off? No? Then why would you think he would? Just a thought. At the time the voluminous discovery was tendered on December 14th, 2006, defense counsel was preparing to litigate a Denny motion to introduce evidence of third-party suspects at Mr. Avery's trial. Now, what this basically means, kids, is that at the time that all of this discovery should have been handed over, they were getting ready to argue the Denny motion, but Kratz knew that without that Denny motion, he was dead in the water. So, what did he do? He made good and goddamn sure that that shit never made it in front of a jury. That's what he did. And you know, Kratz, the more that we find these little Brady violations of yours, the more we're starting to wonder, how hardcore was your case really? You yourself have admitted that you ran a completely circumstantial forensic case. And by withholding exculpatory evidence, it just puts another fucking brick in that building, doesn't it? Violent, sexual, and deceased body images on the Dassey computer were admissible evidence in Mr. Avery's trial to establish the Denny requirement of motive. Wisconsin State Statute 904.04, subparagraph 2, provides the evidence of other crimes and or wrongs and or acts when offered as proof of motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, or absence of mistake or accident is admissible. So all of this information would have been admissible in court. And that's precisely why Kratz kept it back. That is precisely why Tom Fossbender decided to keep it back. And in fact, I'm not so sure that Tom Fossbender didn't keep it back on Kratz's orders. The same result is required here. Miss Halbach was killed in a violent and vicious manner. Bobby Dassey's obsession with images depicting sexual violence against women made it more likely that he would commit a sexual homicide. The violent sexual images were relevant to motive and would have resulted in trial defense counsel being able to establish motive to meet the Denny standard. Sexual assault as the motive for Miss Halbach's murder. Mr. Hunt detected 667 searches for sexual images on the Dassey computer on weekdays when Bobby Dassey was the only member of his family at home. Of the 667 searches for sexual images, 562 were performed on just 10 weekdays. 10 weekdays! Jesus Christ, Bobby! That's an average of 56 searches a day for 10 days. Is Wee Willie Winky not working? Because that looks like a desperate fucking man right there. The Dassey computer contained 128 images of sexual acts that involved the infliction of physical pain and torture, as well as humiliation on females, and mutilated, dead female bodies. Now, kids, I'm just going to say this about that. That is some hardcore shit. That is the kind of shit that people like in the BDSM lifestyle would shy away from. That is some really twisted shit. And hearkening back to Barb's little phone conversation with Steven where she says, you know, Zellner's trying to break up a happy family, referencing Bobby and his wife and their kids. Let me tell you something, kids. How happy could that family be if Bobby Dassey had this kind of proclivity before getting married? What has he subjected his wife to is the question. Because this is the kind of shit that doesn't just go away. You don't just suddenly go, you know, from hardcore porn to a vanilla lifestyle. It doesn't happen. So, who you really trying to protect, Barb? You or Bobby? Because it sure as fuck ain't Brendan. Bobby Dassey was the only family member at home when these searches were typed on the Dassey computer, which was photographed in Bobby's bedroom when the Janda residence was searched on November 9th, 2005. So the computer was in his room. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Just saying. The relevant searches are as follows. Strap in, kids. This is going to be interesting. 13 searches for terms describing forced penetration of sex toys and objects into vaginas, specifically big things in pussy, huge dildo in pussy, stretching pussy toys, and women's dildo. B, 13 searches for terms describing violent accidents, including violent car crashes with images of dead bodies. Specifically, accident, fast car accident, Ford Tempo car accident, race car accidents, and seeing bones, hot girls. Ugh. 8 8 searches for terms describing drowned, dead, or diseased female bodies, specifically drowned girl nude, and drowned pussy. 15 searches for terms describing the infliction of violence on females, including fisting and images of females in pain, specifically fist fucking sluts, fist sex, fisting, girl action hurts, and girls hurting. Jesus, Bobby. Get help. That's all I gotta say is get help. Bobby Dassey cannot be excluded from the additional, remarkably similar searches of the same categories that were typed into the Dassey computer when other family members may have been home. 9 additional searches for terms describing forced penetration of sex toys and objects into vaginas, specifically slut using sex objects, extreme anal toys, and object pussy. 15 additional searches for terms describing violent accidents, including violent car crashes with images of dead bodies, specifically car accidents, a live skeleton, and skeleton. Jesus. 5 additional searches for terms describing drowned, dead, or diseased female bodies, specifically diseased girls and rotten. 50 additional searches for terms describing the infliction of violence on females, including fisting and images of girls in pain, specifically girls grooming face, fist fuck, girls moaning face, and girl guts. You is one sick motherfucker. Yes, you can have a drink of this. Ven para acá aquí. Mr. Avery would be eliminated from all but 50 of the 128 searches at issue simply by having been arrested on November 9th, 2005. Excuse me. One moment. The state's concealment of the Velli report prejudiced the defense. Now this is where this gets interesting, kids. Greg McCrary, current post-conviction counsel's police investigation and procedure expert, opines that Mr. Taddock was not thoroughly investigated as a potential suspect by law enforcement during Ms. Halbach's murder investigation, but he should have been for the following reasons. Several incidents of violence against women were reported about Mr. Taddock, one of which resulted in a battery conviction on July 29, 1997. Mr. Taddock's multiple inconsistent statements severely undermined his credibility at trial. What did I say, kids? Scotty Boy done perjured himself. He called his own credibility into question on the stand. Mr. Taddock should have been investigated regarding his activities on November 3rd, 2005 in light of the anonymous handwritten note discovered by the Green Bay Post Office and reported to the Green Bay Police Department. Mr. Taddock worked at the Wisconsin aluminum foundry. The note specifically referenced a body being burned at 3 a.m. at an aluminum smelter. Who said it first, kids? Over a year ago. Just saying. Mr. Taddock worked the 3rd shift at the Wisconsin aluminum foundry. The note, which was never thoroughly investigated by law enforcement, is potentially of great evidentiary value because the note was sent on November 9th. 2005, and it was not disclosed to the public until November 11th, 2005. James Kirby has confirmed that Mr. Taddock's nickname at work was Skinny, and according to a current employee, many of the shift workers are not totally literate. It is a reasonable inference that a semi-literate employee might have misspelled the word skinny in the note. Mr. Taddock should have been investigated more thoroughly by law enforcement during the Halbach murder investigation. At a minimum, Mr. Taddock should have been asked to provide his DNA and fingerprints and was not. Mr. Taddock's failure to respond to Kevin Ramlow's text about seeing the RAV4 at the turnaround by the old dam in November 2005 before discovery of the Halbach vehicle on the Avery property. And finally, his recent telephone call with Mr. Avery demonstrates his knowledge that Ms. Halbach had left the Avery property on October 31st, 2005. The telephone call also demonstrates that Mr. Taddock has a violent and uncontrollable temper. Mr. Taddock threatened to physically assault Mr. Avery and, even more disturbingly, put Mr. Avery in the ground. Now, kids, here's the thing. Taddick, already we know he's of violent nature. He also seems to be overly concerned with homosexual sex and was a little quick to insinuate that Mr. Avery and Brendan Dassey were involved in a sexual relationship. Now, this is speculation on my part, but how do we know that he wasn't describing his own relationship with Bobby Dassey? Food for thought. Do with it what you will. Ineffective assistance of counsel. The United States Constitution and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin guarantee the right to counsel. The right to counsel is more than the right to nominal representation. Representation must be effective. Whether or not an attorney is experienced is not the criterion for determining whether counsel was effective in a particular case. Current post-conviction counsel has previously alleged that trial defense counsel was ineffective for their failure to consult with a blood spatter expert who would have opined that Stephen Avery's blood was selectively planted in Ms. Halbach's vehicle and that the rear cargo door blood spatter was the result of Ms. Halbach being hit on the head with a mallet or hammer as she lay on the ground next to the driver's side rear wheel of her vehicle and not, as the state contended, for being tossed into the back of her vehicle. Current post-conviction counsel has previously alleged that the trial defense counsel was ineffective for their failure to present a ballistics expert who would have opined that if Ms. Halbach were shot through the skull, there would have been bone fragments embedded in the bullet. On November 13th, 2017, current post-conviction counsel met with trial defense counsel Mr. Strang and Mr. Buting. Mr. Strang has provided an affidavit that concurs that he was ineffective in his representation of Mr. Avery by failing to retain blood spatter and ballistics experts. Now that is a class act move. Most trial counsel will not admit when they were ineffective. For Dean Strang to do so is just fantastic. It shows his integrity and his ethics. Fabulously done, Mr. Strang. The failure of trial defense counsel to have presented blood and ballistics experts meets the criteria of Strickland versus Washington, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so let's discuss. The mere fact that Kathleen Zellner can present evidence that proves that Bobby Dassey was the only person who could have accessed this computer and these searches is in and of itself a bombshell. Even more so are the specific searches that were done. I mean, I'm no prude, but Jesus Christ, man, that was like, what the fuck? Oh my God. Now, I noticed something one day when I was going through the evidence logs of the CASO report recently. I've been meaning to do a video on this for a while now, but, you know, midterms and all that shit. But I noticed something that was very interesting. If you go into the CASO report, you go into the evidence logs, you'll notice on page 8, and I'll put a link down below. You'll notice on page 8 is a description of an item seized during an evidence collection. What makes this item interesting is that none of the other items seized from a different location are listed on this particular log. Instead, this item is listed as having been seized amongst items that were seized at Stephen Avery's property. What is this item, you ask? It's Teresa Halbach's vibrator in the maroon zippered case. Nowhere else on that specific evidence log is anything else that was collected at her home listed. So if nothing else listed connects to Teresa Halbach's home, then that means that they are logging that evidence in as having been collected from Stephen Avery's house. There is clear-cut proof that Kratz, Fossbender, Wiegert, I don't know who the fuck, purposely misrepresented where certain items were found. The fact that it wasn't introduced at trial is really interesting to me because that to me says that there was nothing of evidentiary value found on it. But the fact that it was even attempted is slimy enough. That's just... what the fuck? All right, kids. So that's, you know, this this supplement to this motion is really interesting on many levels. But what I'm more interested in is the evidence files that I know are coming from this. I gotta see that shit. So I will do another video on that. Sorry for the dryness of this one, but my brain's kind of all fuckered up. I've got NaNoWriMo going on, and I'm about 5,000 words behind. And I never like being behind on Nano. And then on top of that, you know, college and all this other shit going on and blah. So, yeah, it's been an interesting week. But Zellner pretty much outright states right here that, and, you know, let's get one thing straight. She's not saying that Bobby Dassey and Scott Taddick actually killed Teresa Halbach. That's not what she's saying here. Nowhere in here will you see her say that. Nowhere. What you are seeing is her proof that, number one, Kratz withheld evidence, knowingly withheld evidence, that Tom Fassbender knowingly withheld evidence, and that both of these people withheld evidence at a time that was critical for the trial because it was right around the time that they were arguing the Denny motion. Number two, she is stating that as a result of this evidence, there were two other suspects for this murder that could not be introduced because of the withholding of this evidence, and then she gives her supporting evidence that they would have been viable suspects worthy of investigation. So that's what's being said right here. She's not saying they did it. She's just saying, well, you know, procedure wasn't followed. He didn't get a fair investigation. He didn't get a fair hearing. He didn't get a fair anything. That's what's being said, in case anybody missed that. So, I'm going to go ahead and leave the links down here in the description for y'all, and as soon as those evidence files hit, I will print them up and go through them with a fine-tooth comb. But don't forget to subscribe to me here on YouTube. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, MamaPhoenix6. And if you boogie on over to the About page here on my channel, you'll find everything from my Facebook fan page to my Pinterest boards. Thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you soon.